So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Was in Hazbin Hotel. So let's start the series as he jumped from the roof of a building designated as BL to the one next to it. Our protagonist kept his eyes open for a specific someone. Happy Hotel's guardhound hell, which they say is where nearly everyone ends up these days. He thought, from the lowest of lows to the morally betrayed, from those who were once saints and were acting in everyone's best interests in the long run to those who simply didn't care and committed cruel acts for the fun of it. In all honesty, it got to the point where certain events were taking place to help lessen the annual purge and hopefully give people some hope. After the angels left after creating this massive mess, the streets he looked upon were covered in body parts and soaked in BL demons of all classes, except royals, and those of a similar nature, were helping to clean up. Our protagonist's ears twitched as he heard a familiar sound, causing him to look up. A pretty person got out of a crappy car that pulled up to the side of the road. He had 4 arms, white fur skin, a very attractive bosom, and a white and pink top that emphasized his chest. He wore long boot-like heels on his feet and looked sexy, but the most striking features were his eyes, which were red with a black background, and his hair, which had pink highlights to match his eyes. He just sold himself for cash, the protagonist thought, and he leaped from the building and landed safely. Make sure your wife knows I appreciate the cash, Angela said, shoving the money into his bosom. Yeah, redeeming yourself my ass. The demon inside the car rolled his eyes. Angela was a famous pawn star in hell with white fur and a heart on the back of his head. Angel smiled as he watched the car drive away and blew a kiss while taking out the cash to make sure his rehab and laps were worth it. I really need this, Angel thought, before approaching a machine to insert the money, because even though he didn't want to give him any, a few dollars for a roll with this idiot was more than worth getting his rocks off. Our protagonist, Naruto, was about 6 seconds in length, but he was more different from Angel than Angel, who was a spider-themed demon. Naruto was a hellhound, like most hellhounds, with gray and white fur that resembled a wolf, a long muzzle that displayed a frown, and a wild, spiky mane that was bright yellow running down his back. He wore no shoes, showcasing his digitigrade stance legs with clawed feet and claws on his hands. The black and razor-sharp Nara's ears were pointed straight up, showing white inside, and his long bushy tail swayed safely above the ground. He wore a black and gray skull shirt with a pentagram on the back, tight-fitting black jeans, and an orange watch. No one knows why he wore the watch, but he only claimed it was a little nostalgic from a life he lost, and everyone knew better than to start a conversation about it. You're really going to stop me now from getting a buzz? Angel waved his hands around, saying, come on, man. Charlie already does that, and it is even more damning when the Mexican Cyclops are around. The first thing that caught Angel's attention was his eyes. Unlike most hellhounds, Naruto had blue eyes instead of the red ones that they are used to, and it was possible to see the power that resided beneath them. As he gazed at the spider, Naruto said, yeah, right. Angel scoffed, one of his right hands pushing his hair out of his eyes, and a small growl made Angel wave his hands in a slight panic. Okay, but what am I supposed to do about this? He sighed and shook his head at Angel's remarks. Look, I understand that they can be suffocating at times, but they really do want better for you if you actually talk to them about things. We might reach some compromises, he said, gesturing the money. They'll be upset, yes, but they won't tear your head off for one mistake. Naruto smiles a little, and we both know that completely cutting off all vices is a very strict order. Angel smiled and laughed heartily. Damn WR. I just needed something to take the edge off. Oh, Naruto pulled an orange phone out of his pants and looked at a blog site. You mean you didn't want to argue against some of the things I did? These posts. Naruto flipped his phone over, and Angel glanced at the screen. It showed messages about him disappearing and about how he was purportedly going straight, cleaning up his act, and not offering his services. Angel's face twisted in disgust and fear. Of course, Valentino was sharing this information, and Angel was upset about the damage to his reputation. I can't waste this chance to go straight, but my reputation being tarnished is not something I'll permit. Angel turned back to Naruto while the hellhound stared at him. Yeah, that might have influenced my decision more, Angel said, shaking his head slightly before searching the phone further. Before displaying something to him. Just watch Dumbus, okay? Geez, a flea crawled, Angel said, smiling and giving him a sullen look. I dare you, Angel said, raising his hands. Charlotte Manny, our head honcho's daughter, is our special guest today, Katie said in an irritated voice. Charlotte, what is this passion project you are so passionate about, Charlie? Charlie looked nervously from Katie to the camera and said, you know, we just had our annual purge, but as I was born here, I can't help but feel sad at the loss of life, Katie said, pressing her fingers against the desk as Tom trenched. After many years of watching my people get killed to make room here in hell, I have come up with a solution, Angel said, trying to hide that he enjoyed the song. I have devised a way to help redeem people to go to heaven, Charlie said passionately, looking off the screen at something or someone smiling. Angel and Naruto watched as Charlie showcased her singing abilities as she sang about the happy hotel. She really enjoys singing even though it doesn't seem mature, Angel said. Charlie said, you mean the Pawn Star? As she sat stylishly on the desk. You effing W Tom, Katie insulted, turning her eyes to her co-host before they returned to Naruto, who frowned at what Katie had said to him. Shut up and watch, Naruto added as he held the phone in front of the audience, and Katie started to laugh at Charlie's plan for rehabilitation. With enough cocaine and lube, you could pay that hooker to do anything. Charlie huffed as he got to his feet and looked straight into Katie's eyes. Angel has been doing well the past 2 weeks. He has started to get his act together and has been clean for 2 weeks, she said confidently. Although Angel felt a surge of pride in making Charlie happy, there was another part that argued he shouldn't have to make anyone happy but himself, seeing the conflicting emotions, Katie said. Angel, don't you see Charlie believed you can do better than this? Why do you think she got you out of that man's grasp? Asked Angel as he shoved the phone away from him. Angel looked at the ground and felt bad because he was using Charlie's kindness to live on hotel rent, even though he knew that he could get a room with anyone who was desperate enough, but he already knew that it wouldn't last long and that he would be kicked to the curb at least Charlie tried to be there for me instead of having me be there for her, Angel thought, which was refreshing, but his ego wouldn't let it show. She got me out of service with Valentino, so that was more than enough for me to try her whole redemption thing. However, Angel blew his hair out of his face again, and I can't exactly do what she wants me to the letter. I mean giving up everything. He wringed his hair in frustration. Then tell her this. Don't be vague and rude, actually tell her this. Then maybe you guys can come to some compromises about what needs to be done for you to commit to the hotel, he said, placing a comforting hand on Angel's shoulder. Angel was about to say this when there was an explosion, and they looked up to see a blimp flying around and someone laughing in the distance. Naruto rolled his eyes and groaned at the blimp, which was a snake pea ahead, possibly because he lost his balls or causing trouble again, Nero said before moving to the side. He then saw that someone was shooting at the blimp and tossing bombs, and that your girlfriend seemed to be fighting with him. Time to have some fun, cried Cherry Bomb Angel with delight. You are not going to do a DMN thing, Nero said, pointing a claw finger at his eye. Angel stared back. Why isn't it just Charlie who is doing the interview on the news? The hotel will be seen as a bigger joke, and that is something I won't let you do, Nero argued persuasively. You can't expect me to let my best friend possibly die out there on her own. Her father didn't act out, and getting caught on camera won't help at all. Furry pawn advertisement, Naruto growled with his fangs at the spider who pushed off of Nero. The young man glanced and saw the spider demon begging, damn my bleeding heart, as he seized Naruto's jacket. Please, Naruto, she is powerful, but I don't want to let the danger of her being killed happen, Angel begged. But believe what's coming out of Angel's mouth, isn't she as strong as an overlord? She can manage herself. This isn't the first time she's defeated that moron by herself. Charlie will kill me for this, Nero thought as he removed Angel's hands from his clothing and began to walk down the effing street. The limo is waiting for you. Get in and head to the hotel, and I'll try to cover your fug up here today, Narrate said, preparing for the altercation and the disappointment he would face from Vaggie and Charlie. But what Angel saw was Nero turn to the fighting and start walking to it, he said. Charlie will kill me for this later, if it means that much to you now. Before he walked over to take a nap, Angel said, I'll help her out, in a rare show of compassion. It was good to see the young hellhound who had scared him when he first arrived at the hotel and did try to bed. What, don't blame him, he is cute with a good heart in a place like hell. Fine. Just make sure Cherry is okay. However, this means you have to commit to the program and talk to Charlie about compromises. As the limo passed the sign he released, Nero muttered, I really need to start charging more for SHT like this. He then stretched his legs a little before running toward the Carnage News studio, where Vaggie was watching the events unfold. To be honest, it was alarming. I thought that with the turf war going on, Angel would F this up for us, Vaggie thought as she looked at her phone, keeping an eye on the turf war. But there are no reports about him in it, so the hotel is safe. Oh, and the reporter is a beach that I would strangle, but it looks like Charlie might do that for me, Vaggie thought as she frowned, her headbow sharpening and resembling curved horns. Oh yeah, princess, I'm not surprised you are using Angel like this, she said darkly, and Charlie raised an eyebrow. Katie had been disparaging Charlie's dream for approximately 10 minutes, and Charlie had been reacting angrily each time. Shameful Charlie, in a moment of weakness, changed slightly, revealing her horns and turning into Reed. Then she slammed the reporter's head into the desk, shattering it on impact. "Don't you dare talk about him like a pet again. I'll make sure to tear your soul to pieces," she said to the camera crew. "How can you talk about reformation when you are using one of your own to protect your small space and pontificating about all that rehab while repeating the work of your ancestors?" Charlie continued, losing sight of her objective. "This pet, as you call him, is someone very special and deserving of praise, unlike you Beachmore. He has accomplished great things in hell on his terms." Katie saw them waving and pressed her finger against her headset in her ear, received a message and smiled. "Oh, your dear pet is making a scene today," Charlie said. The group snapped their fingers and turned the screen to show a hooded hellhound running across the roof, dodging blasts and bombs being thrown at him, along with a Cyclops woman holding bombs. The station ignored Charlie's segment in favor of focusing on the turf war, which Charlie and Vaggie said in shock as they watched Naruto on the screen. The hellhound who brought the hounds together, who is now serving the Manny family, seemed to be engaged in combat with a resident genius named Sir Penis Tom. "Another example of your reform act, dear Princess?" Katie asked with sickly malicious enjoyment as Charlie's flame of rage died. Charlie sighed in embarrassment and worry as she watched Naruto chop down into an egg boy, its yolk center bursting in his mouth before catching an explosion tossed to him by Cherry Bomb, hurling it with enough force to break through the steel hub of the blimp, detonating upon impact on the screen. As this woman regained her confidence, Charlie said, "Don't forget that, or do after all. You seem to forget what true beauty is, Beach." This infuriated Katie, which made Tom uneasy, but then they hear an explosion and crash, and when they turn back to the screen, Naruto is standing over the remains of the blimp that had fallen to the ground and out. Instead, he is more concerned with doing his own thing, because he is free to do whatever he wants, as long as it is consistent with his beliefs. The audience watched as the legendary Royal Hellhound used his powers in a historic moment. Katie yelled loudly, Charlie watched, and her eyes twitched, "And when I get there, Sir Penis charged at Naruto, who sidestepped his attack and was cut by his claws. The snake growled and attempted to strike again, but he vanished in a flash of silver and materialized above him. In the meantime, Naruto thought, I just want to finish this shit up quick before it becomes a spectacle again, while Charlie sat in anger and shook her head thinking, Charlie is going to be really mad about this. Vaggie thought. He was covered in BL and egg yolk, which was starting to smell bad and hurt his sense of smell. In a matter of seconds, he slashed his red claws, causing the snake to scream in agony and explode in a shower of BL and guts. Nero simply rolled his shoulders and turned his head to Cherry, saying, I'll charge. Before jumping off to return to the hotel, Naruto later said to his loose acquaintance, you for my services. Okay, nah, said Cherry, beaming broadly as she watched Naruto leave. Now, to stake my claim on this turf back in the news studio, well there you have it, demons and Hellborn, she said, we just witnessed another case of the legendary Hellhound that has taken Hell by storm, dating back to when he was one, with him taking down powerful figures through Hell until, at the age of 16, he became an. Not only did he win Bachelor of the Year 6 times in a row, but he is also known as the princess's personal attack dog Charlie. Katie declared on the news station, completely disregarding Charlie, that he is leading the reform, elevating Hellhound status in Hell, and becoming one of the premier demons. Anyone who kills will receive a lot of support and followers in the years to come. Charlie shouted, he's not my dog, he's not my pet. He's my son, you, and then abruptly threw Katie across the room, igniting a furious argument that lasted for an hour before Charlie and Vaggie stormed out of the building. The hotel won't be held accountable for this mess, but it was obvious that Angel's name was on it. Charlie held her hand as they arrived at the limo, and that stupid hound is also linked to this mess. So it wasn't a good idea to kill Penis. I was wearing a hoodie to hide my identity, Naruto said when Charlie asked him, sitting on his hunches with a small note that said punishment at the announcement. Well, I was wearing a hoodie to hide it. Charlie glared at him. That did SHT to hide it. Take a deep breath, Jez, calm down. It was better me doing it than Angel, Naruto said, calling attention to himself. This is an example of your dream, Vaggie yelled as she stepped into the limousine that evening. Happy hotel foy. The spider demon froze as Angel entered the hotel lobby, and Charlie turned to gaze at him before gulping. Vaggie was playing with her spear at the same time. Oh, and what was he doing outside the hotel? I might have had a moment of weakness and had some alcohol and bought some drugs, Angel said nervously as Naruto rolled his eyes. pulled out his phone, and played with it. Charlie sighed as Vaggie snarled. When she called forth her spear, "You bastard!" Vaggie yelled angrily, and Nero rolled his eyes and grabbed her by the shoulder, holding on tight, while his eyes were still on his phone. "Calm down, Vaggie," he said. "It's not like most people wouldn't take the hotel seriously in the first place. In fact, most dentists weren't going to take us seriously anyway. But at least this way we can blame Angel's absence. If nothing else, the hotel would have been turned into an effing joke." "Look, I'm sorry I did what I did, okay," said Angel, who sighed. "Naruto had already lectured me about it, and to be honest, I understand," he said. "A free day during his rehab and that he was taking advantage of it or something. We can save face that way, plus fighting the stupid snake idiot and killing him sends a clear message to the overlords in the life that this hotel is no easy target and that unless they are here for treatment, we'll send them packing," he said. "I know it was a lot to ask. But you have to understand, Angel, we need to start somewhere, and you have to be willing to comply," Charlie said after calming down a little and sitting down on the couch. "You two can't expect me to quit every effing thing called turkey. That is how you send your body into shock," he added, rolling his eyes as he spoke. In a flashback, Naruto, then 6 years old, was searching through some trash cans for food at an alley entrance between two apartment buildings because he was hungry and had not eaten much in the past 2 days. His left ear tip was missing and his fur was covered in BL crust because the wound was infected. "I know that she truly wants her way no matter how demon of her, because it was the same way when she found me." He was wearing rags that barely covered his body when he opened his eyes and was informed that he was in a hellhound orphanage on the outskirts of the Ring of Gluttony. "How long have I been here?" Naruto asked himself, scanning his surroundings suspiciously while he continued to look for food, his tail trembling in terror. "I suppose that since I was sent to this place that the village was right. I am a demon," he thought. Even though Naruto had blue eyes, which other hellhounds said would make him valuable to someone in the hiring business, the matron in charge of the orphanage soon realized that he was different from most people. He was also exposed to other hellhound children of various ages, and because of his eyes, he was bullied. The matron did nothing to stop the violence the children inflicted on him. So in a fit of rage, Naruto killed the matron, earning him praise from the purge, who only survived by curling up in a ball under dead bodies and holding his breath when angels were playing dead nearby, was the most convincing example of his inability to survive. This led to his current situation, which happened once, and I won't go into that. But other children, since they simply took her belongings and moved in, while Naruto left without wanting his life to be bound to the place. As he continued to scarf down the food, he heard a screech which made his ears perk up. He turned his head out of the can to see a full garbage bag that had been thrown on his head by someone in the building who was throwing their trash from the 4th story. The bag broke open, revealing half-eaten food and fruits. Without hesitation, Naruto grabbed what he could and started packing it into his mouth. He was momentarily confused and prepared to run when the white limousine pulled up to the alley entrance. A few odd people had tried to arrest him a while ago, claiming that he would make a great pet, but he was positive that it had something to do with him losing his identity, so he said, "F that noise." Luckily, he was like most men, and after being kicked in the balls, he was down for a while so he could run. The door of the limousine opened, and a white-skirt girl with blonde hair and gold eyes appeared. She seemed to be smiling. "Yes," Naruto said, ready to strike fast and then flee if needed. He gave the girl a fierce look, but a few seconds later he was in front of her, holding under his armpits. "Aren't you just cute?" In order to get a good look at him, she bent down to his level, smiled, and wore a purple outfit that hugged her form. She also had items on her cheeks and her fangs in her mouth. "This child needs a bath, some medical attention, and some grooming," Nar said. "I've never seen a blue-eyed hellhound like you before, and I'm sorry." She held the child close to her, but then she relaxed her hold. She tapped his nose, which made him growl, which made her laugh. Then she noticed his left ear, and she said, "Oh, your ear is bleeding and it is probably infected." "Nope," she said, walking back to her car and sitting in her seat. "Indeed, my lady." Naruto was paranoid enough to think that he should avoid this woman as much as possible after she let him get into the limousine, but he couldn't because the child lock was on. After a brief drive, Naruto was carried into the house where he tried to jump out when the door was opened, but she caught him quickly and held him on her lap the entire time. This annoyed him because it seemed that she was stronger than he had expected, and when he looked up, he saw a castle of some sort. As he entered the house, the girl held him in her arms before butlers and maids of all shapes bowed and welcomed the girl home. Charlie, from what he understood, according to the rumors he had heard in the orphanage, she is a noble Naruto. He was kind and sitting almost in the middle of a pentagonal city, watching the building, and he had an instinct that the place was important and that the girl lived there. The fact that they stopped in front of the house may have given that away to him. Naruto stared up at her blankly as she pulled him toward the enormous bath, which made him wonder, when did I agree to this? Since some of the nobles viewed his kind's garbage demons as nothing more than toys for their own entertainment, Naruto demanded to speak after a long silence while attempting to seem scary. What does this beach want with me? I'm tortured and forced to fight by a pet. Oh, you're so adorable and precious, I can't wait to see what kind of demon you'll become in the future, Charlie said, her eyes full of stars. Maybe one day you can help me with my dream, she said. But Naruto ignored her because she seemed to be talking about a lot of different things, some of which had to do with her dream. Really, all I wanted was to eat and find a safe place to sleep, Naruto thought before Charlie handed him off to a servant before he entered the spacious bath and was. As a female servant brought some clothes and the servant who helped bathe him applied ointment and bandaged his left ear, Naruto thought for the first time since he entered hell. A few minutes later, he was dropped on the floor and dried off until he was positive that his fur had never felt so soft and fluffy. He had taken off his rags and placed in warm water, scrubbed his bristled fur hard, and had CRP applied to his face, which he had never smelled before. Charlie said, "Oh, look at you all clean and tidy, come on. I want to introduce you to mom and dad," before he entered the room wearing a white t-shirt and shorts. When she extended her hand to him, Nar raised an eyebrow and stared at it, as if it were dangerous. What the hell is going on with this speech? Naruto thought as he slowly took her hand, his chest constricted as many of his beliefs were being called into question. She is a royal, but she isn't hurting me, he said. Lucifer Manny, the king and queen of hell, was sitting in a large room that Naruto imagined to be a throne room of some kind. Manny was wearing a white high-collar suit, a black bow tie, and a red undershirt with white stripes. On a small table beside his throne, he had a black cane on top of it, a wide-brimmed white top hat with a purple snake and red apple over a red band, and a black snake. His hat resting on the table, his eyes yellow with snake-like black slit pupils, and his daughter Charlie's red cheeks and purple eyelids that resemble eyeshadow. Lilith Manny was a tall woman, taller than both her husband and daughter. She had silver eyes, pale skin, and long blonde hair. Her most distinguishing physical characteristics were a pair of horns at the top of her tight black dress and black gloves, which her husband ironically lacked. Naruto thought, I see you brought home a new pet, and he grinned down at the child as he swallowed a lump in his throat. But Naruto growled at being called a pet and unconsciously released some of his power, revealing his red aura, which made Lucifer smile and Lilith laugh. Now, dear, what are you doing with this cute little thing? Lilith inquired while wearing a pearl necklace around her neck and reaching up to her forearms, which were connected to the sea via mesh. As he continued to look through his phone, Naruto thought, someone told me that I wanted to give him a better life, so I'm adopting him as my son as of today. Charlie proudly announced the news, causing sardonic eyes to pop out. Fast forward to the moment when I learned that Charlie was actually the princess of hell, and that the two characters on the thrones were the king and queen. She brought me into her family as her son, despite her big heart and desire to act in the best interests of others. She later met Vaggie, and the two of us grew close. Nar was raised as the grandson of the king and queen, but to others, he was a dirty stray who was taken in by the princess. Nevertheless, he eventually proved everyone wrong and became one of the most feared demons in all of hell, and even the king had come to respect him because of his. I don't see you two, he said, because even among his own kind he is unique with powers that he couldn't explain, and even a healing factor that is stronger than most at this point. Naruto heard Angel holding a large pole that could touch the ceiling, and Charlie was stopping him from installing it. He simply choked it up to who he was as a human, and left it at that. After all these years, he had forgotten his previous life. Since he was a hellhound and his hearing was sensitive, he kept trying to install the STPR pole while making concessions to me. When he finally had enough, Naruto looked and saw the three fighting. What about this Angel? Naruto presented a terrifying Vaggie and Charlie at the prospect of establishing a bar, saying, I'll put a bar in the hotel, and you can drink in the afternoons if you behave. "Hey, I can live with that as long as I can drink here. I'll give up the other two things," said Angel, while Viggy looked against it as Charlie considered it. He turned away from the girls and dropped the STPR pole to help keep them under control. Charlie then whispered her hand on her chin and tapped it lightly. "Can at least do that, but please don't abuse this privilege." Vaggie was shocked to hear Charlie allow alcohol as Angel cheered him on in triumph. But Charlie is unable to argue with Angel. Angel was right when he said that forcing him to completely abstain from certain vices would likely make rehabilitation more difficult. So allowing this one thing for the time being could be a good step. Charlie explained that he didn't really want it, but understood that it was essential. "However, I will support Charlie's decision," Vaggie said in defeat. Naruto saw the three grudgingly agree, and he finally sighed before someone called him. He checked his ID and saw that the pop star's bodyguard was texting him, and he thought, "I really don't want to deal with her today." His response was, "Hey Tex, hey Nero, can you do me a favor? It depends on who is asking for the favor, you or your boss. Don't worry, she isn't aware that I'm doing this yet." With a calm tone, Vortex clarified, "I checked with the agency and most of them are busy or doing their own thing at this point, or on break, so can you lend me a handman? The agency knows I don't work for cheap, right?" "Oh, no doubt," he replied, "and don't worry. The boss won't try anything, she is too busy, a big concert is coming up, and while I'm confident I can handle it by myself, they want to make sure nothing goes out of hand." "What time is tomorrow's concert?" "Thanks for the assistance," Vortex assured me. "You know the venue?" Vortex asked his friend. "Yes, I do. Let's just make sure things go smoothly," Vortex said. "Don't worry about it, man. The agency will make sure that doesn't happen again," Vortex added. "The last time I worked for her, I almost got raped," and Naruto complained when he heard the word rap. Job request. Tex needs help at a concert that could go awry, so he wants some extra hands to help keep their star safe. Nero told Vaggie that it was, in fact, her, and she motioned for Charlie to come over and wait for the concert. Charlie glared her clear red, and Nero hung up, wondering who that sweetie Nero was. This made him cringe inside. "In any case, she has called me to hire you as her permanent bodyguard. You won't ever do that, and I'm bound by the hotel, so don't worry, I'm just protecting their star and idiots from getting hurt. As soon as the show is over, and I get paid." Naruto said his role in this contract and he just shook his head. "No, I forbid it after what happened last time," she said. "Calm down, it'll blow over, Mom," said Nar casually. This made Charlie relax because he knew that the only way to calm her down was to call her mother. This is a rare gesture sometimes, so he does this to calm her down. "Okay, but call me if something goes wrong," he said, "and I'm going to get some sleep. I'm going to wake me if something comes up, and no, it's not an invitation to my bet, Angel. Okay night, sweetie," Charlie said as she waved him good night. Angel grumbled. I knew that things would get interesting when she sat down, because Charlie was such a loving mother that it's nuts. Charlie went to the door and opened it, revealing a tall demon with deer antlers, a red pinstriped suit, and a large smile that displayed his yellowed teeth. Charlie closed the door in his face and turned to the sight in confusion. She opened the door again, but the demon was still there. He continued, and then Charlie closed the door again, saying, "Hey, Vaggie, the radio." "The 8-year-old Nero," muttered demon, "is here," pointing to the door as Lilith and Lucifer invited him and Naruto alone to join them for dinner. "My life, my choices, that is all that matters to me," Nero said, closing his eyes and remembering a conversation he had with Lucifer. He was only able to smile slightly as he fell asleep, remembering a conversation he had with Lucifer. "Simple Lord Manny, even though I had only known them for 2 years, I still held them in high regard. When I was alive, everything was decided for me, including who I could talk to, who I could love, who I could beat, how long I would starve, and who I could be molested. Even when I was allowed to die," Naruto said, swallowing the food in his mouth, which caused Lilith and Lucifer to raise an eyebrow. "No one would take that away from me again, and if I wanted to kill someone, I would." When Lilith finished her glass of wine, she inquired, "I want to see her happy. If being her son kills people who threaten her, and helps her with the redemption thing, makes her happy, then so be it. As long as I get to see her smile, that is all that matters to me, as that is something I will cherish forever. I will steal what I want, buy what I want, love who I want, and die how I want. My choice." "What about Charlie? I see you bend backwards for her." In the end, Naruto fell asleep without realizing that by the time he woke up, everything in the hotel would have changed for the better or worse, and we would witness it. "I fucking hate waking up early." Manny, Lucifer, and Lilith smiled at his responses, each reaching for his hand. "Welcome to the family," Lucifer said, laughing at the shocked expression on Naruto's face. When he pulled the blanket over his face to keep the light from waking him, Naruto felt groggy. Nero was not a morning person at all, They're tucked away in a place full of violent explosions and foul odors, and he didn't want to know where they were coming from, so he thought, I guess I'll get up now. Unfortunately, he had to throw off the blanket and start getting ready for the busy day ahead of him, because the concert would be in the Circle of Greed. In his early years, he hated rising early, so Charlie was the first to welcome him and always led him around the castle. Not wanting to argue, he said, it looked like she was exhausted. I suppose yesterday was quite exhausting and Angel's bothersome behavior yesterday didn't help. Naruto left his room after getting dressed and brushing his hair and went down the hall opposite Vaggie and Charlie's room. They had the biggest room on the top floor, and they insisted that he have a room next to them. He yawned and glanced around the room, but he was concerned about one thing. The entire area seemed to have changed a lot from how Charlie had set it up. It had a more bar-themed theme and seemed to have been decorated with elegant aesthetics items that, if he was being honest, looked more like they were from the 1920s. Luckily, Charlie had forced me to study the last few hundred years of history, but this can't be Charlie's work, because she has more modern taste, complete with butterflies and other such items. Hey kid, a tired, stern voice murmured as he was heading to the bar area to get himself a drink before Charlie woke up. Naruto turned to face the voice and noticed a black and white cat demon sitting at the bar, sipping from a bottle that read cheap booze. The demon had a top hat and a bow around his neck. Hey, Naruto, long time. Huh, he said with a faint smile, but he was unable to feel joy. Yet you still got to tell me how you won all those games. I mean you even beat the house cheating outright, Naruto said, recalling their first encounter, during which the cat demon also chuckled a little. Yes, it hasn't been since you hired me for that brief excursion at the casino, he said prior to taking a deep swig of his cheap alcohol. I'm not sure what to say, man, he said, raising an eyebrow. How are you here, man? He laughed arrogantly and replied, you're here for that redemption. Husker snorted redemption. That is a good joke if he heard one. No, I was called here by some idiot who decided to use me as a guy for the front desk. He took another swig of his booze, but other than that, they dragged me away from my poker game when I was about to win the whole effing pot. His brow furrowed as he thought, I can't think of a single person. Can it be him? Yeah, that Suggs man, but you mentioned someone summoned you here, Naruto said in a low voice, hoping it wasn't him. Who else could do it? Husker rolled his eyes as he leaned into the bar. He snarled as he remembered all the money he would have won. 150,000 man. Can you believe that SHT? Husker nearly yelled, smashing his bottle into the bar and nearly breaking it. This caused Naruto's hopes to drop. Red Eel certainly sounds like him, and Naruto's ears lay flat as he gripped his head as a headache started to form. He basically told me to work the bar and reception for some alcohol, but apparently I can only serve people in the afternoon and in certain amounts, if you ask me. He took another swig, but when he looked into his bottle and saw that it was empty, he threw it in the trash. You weren't here when he showed up or summoned us, but yep, that was him, he responded with a look of familiarity. Naruto groaned at this realization, and Charlie asked, did you make a bargain with him? If so, that was a very stupid thing to do, he thought before turning to face Husker. Who else but? Then he heard humming coming from the other room, followed by rapid movement, and then the sound of rapid movement entered the foyer, revealing Nifty. Have a man, she shrieked, thrilled to see a male, and hurried over. This is Nifty, she will be the maid, I think I can see that, Naruto replied, keeping Nifty away from her legs to avoid her grabby hands. Ah, Naro, how nice of you to say about your dear friend Naruto, he said, avoiding her grabby hands. Oh, mommy likes it rough. Tilda, how annoying, but at least it is one of the less annoying overlords in this day and age, Husker muttered as he saw Nark's face twist into annoyance. I'm surprised that you would be interested in the hotel in any way, shape or form, Nar said gravely as he kicked Nifty across into the other room, causing a loud crash and chicken noises to go off as his fur stood on end. Behind him, a man wearing a red dress, red eyes, horns on his head, a microphone staff, and a twisted golden smile, said, Husker, mind me pouring? My usual sure thing, kid. Naruto turned his head and said, oh come, now we're both overlords here, remarked Nar, ignoring him as Alastair laughed. He went up to Naruto and put a hand on his shoulder, but Naruto swiftly withdrew it, which made Alastair laugh. You mean you're an overlord? All the turf I own is under the watch of that explosive Cyclops. True, Alastair stated, smiling momentarily before looking directly into Naruto's eyes. I never claimed to be one, he replied clearly, pointing out the window to an explosion in the distance. Nero said. You really need to let go of that grudge, man, as Husker shoved his drink forward, scotch on the rocks, which Naruto took in his hand. You know you could kill that fool if it comes down to it, so why is it such a big deal to try and outdo him? Naruto said, his smile tightening with 1920s slang. You both know that when it comes to being one, you're more than qualified compared to the rest of the so-called overlords like that month's watcher Vox. The cat demon just made another one, knowing how tense Nero is with this red freak here, and wanting to do everything in his power to keep them from fighting. They would probably destroy most of Hell or at least Pentagram City in their fight. Yes, I hate him, but Vox is just a bother to me. I could kill that idiot, but he is more of a number. Nero shook his head as he took his second round, right? Lucifer hates it when powerful people cause trouble in Hell, because it only makes his job harder and, more importantly, weakens their overall power. Alter laughed, his eyes widening and turning into clock faces at the idea of killing Vox. Even though I'm sure I can defeat them all, and I know that he has more than enough resources, that it would be expensive and annoying. As he put down the cup and tapped the glass 3 times, Naruto thought, tell me, dear dog, what do you think of what I did here? He then looked around the foyer and said, well, you saved me from having to spend money to put a bar in here, but please refrain from giving Angel anything else other than this bar. Angel's eyes briefly turned red and Alastair grinned. When you last betrayed Lucifer and his family, Naruto casually remarked that he knew Altaster couldn't do anything to him because of the lack of respect. Altaster's smile faded for the first time in a long time before returning more strainedly, and his aura screamed to life. We're trying to make this legitimate, and the last thing I need is for you to destroy this place because you're bored, my dear boy. I'm not exactly indulging in my sins like a certain piece of venison, remember, but he said that in a harsher tone than when he was talking about Vox. Nero nodded his head and took another sip of his drink, not downing it this time, because he didn't need to be completely inebriated for work. Oh, the dear demon laughed. What about you? The hellhound who has made enemies of almost everyone in hell, who isn't allied with the king, or doesn't want to jump your bones. What the F is going on? Charlie was glaring at both men while wearing a black, nearly transparent night. After Naruto snipped this, Alter bristled and wanted to bet doggy. Soon after, both auras flared back to life, with Alter calling his shadows to his sight and Naruto ready to swing his claws, creating a terrifying situation for most people. The Husker simply hid beneath the bar, waiting for a fight to break out, while also consuming another bottle of cheap alcohol. Good morning, dears. Don't worry about this. We just had a bit of a what is it called these days, Alter remarked, waving his hand at the girls as the fight in the motel came to an end. His smile had changed from ominous to friendly. It's over, come back up, he yelled angrily as he sat down after tapping his chin and then snapping his fingers in what I think is a shaft measuring contest. Nar snorted before turning back to Husker and hammering on the tabletop. Give me your phone, man, Naruto said, shaking his shoulders, when he noticed Sambi. Nero smiled, pulled out his phone, typed some information into it, and pointed it directly at Husker. When their phones touched, a ding sound went off, and when he looked down, he saw a transfer of $200,000, which made his eyes bulge. Consider this an apology for Alastair screwing you in your gambling game, and also funds for whatever you need while running the bar, Nero said, putting his phone away. Thanks, kid, you were always one of the good ones in hell. Naruto nodded, extending his arms above his head and bending backwards to touch the ground with the top of his head. Alright, time to get ready for work. It's going to take a while to get to the greed ring, he said, snapping back into a standing position. The cat demon smiled voluntarily as he turned on his stool and finished his drink, returning the glass to Husker for the first time, at least to Vaggie. I know, but don't worry. I got this handled, Naruto said, rolling his eyes this time. My job probably is just stopping imps and other demons from rushing the stage and whatnot, plus I'll be wearing a hat and glasses keeping her from recognizing me, he said, turning to face Vaggie, who was looking worried. Make sure you stay safe while out there. You know what people out there would do if they found you at the concert, he added. He walked back up the stairs right away after noticing that Charlie was miffed. It looks like I need to use my ultimate weapon, Nar thought as he approached Charlie. I'll be fine. Don't worry, and I'll call if I need anything, Mom, he said, leaning down to kiss her cheek, which made Charlie stiffen with a big smile. He knows how to control her, as shown by the fact that she shook her head, and the others raised an eyebrow at the show of affection. Charlie, the sweetest child, gushed, pulling her hair over her face to hide her blushes. She smiled. She truly was an overly loving mother, she said as Naruto walked back into his room after climbing the stairs and changing out of his t-shirt and shorts and, in accordance with his taste, putting on a classier outfit, a suit made for fighting looking exactly like a black suit with a red tie and everything. The clothes were made of breathable materials that allowed him to move around and fight in them, and they are easy to repair if they are torn and don't make him feel stiff. This is the perfect combination of wanting to look professional and being able to fight quickly if necessary. Naruto then removed a fire red and orange beanie and put it on his head to cover his damaged ear and conceal his. Then he put on his shades inside man, which was a pain, but hey, I'm getting paid, so this is okay, he said as he checked himself in his door-sized mirror to make sure everything was on correctly. And Naruto came down and undid his tie, and Charlie, coming down from her cloud 9, saw this and approached him. "Here, I got it," Charlie said, taking the tie and tying it correctly. "Thank you, Mom," Naruto said as he hugged her feet off the floor before he put her down. "I'm off the room," turn with Charlie immediately taking some pictures of him in his outfit and him just deadpanning really. Nar thought as he got up and saw that Angel had come downstairs flirting with Husker and talking to Alter. Husker doesn't feel love for anyone or anything other than alcohol, so he'll be lucky to even have his attention for more than 5 minutes. Of course, I always love seeing my child looking his best, even if it's just for that. "That goes double for you, Angel," said Beach Charlie, snarling the final line with a partial transformation. Nar rolled his eyes behind his shades and waved everyone to behave. Naruto laughed as he walked out the front door and saw the white limousine waiting for him. "Xavier, do you mind taking it to the job site?" he sighed. "Lord Manny." Xavier, a honey badger demon, said as he started the car. "I'm not Lord Manny, just Naruto," Naruto said mildly irritably. "Get that through your head," the driver said, laughing. "Of course, Lord Naruto." As he pulled out of the parking lot and started the long drive to the Ring of Greed, Naruto just rolled his eyes and stared out the window. He really hated being a king, and all the kissing and such got old. "Well, at least I can watch the crazy SHT in hell on my way to work," Naruto thought, putting on some headphones and starting to listen. Angel was shocked to see the normally lively and kind owner acting so irascible and turning to Vaggie, who was now reading a magazine. Charlie began pacing back and forth and muttering to himself just 10 minutes after Nero left. Alastair found this amusing and watched with delight as Nifty cleaned behind the girl every few minutes as they hurried through the hotel. Husker simply rolled his eyes at this and started drinking. "I'm worried, especially with the person who hired Narrate hearing her muttering Vaggie and the others sweating hearing strangle beach me baby shouldn't have let him take the job, just make another one," she said, growing agitated as she snapped her bow like horns. "What's up with the boss lady?" Angel asked, holding his hands up and glancing at Charlie. Angel asked, "Did something happen with the girl that he is going to see?" Not knowing that this woman had Charlie's knickers in a twist. "No, I was looking for something to eat after you guys agreed to the bar," Angel said casually. Vaggie rolled her eyes and let out a sigh of disgust. "When you guys agreed to the bar," Angel said. Vaggie growled in frustration as she pinched the bridge of her nose and asked, "Were you not paying attention yesterday at all?" She threw her hair and ran her hand over her eye. The client was one of the hottest artists at the time and was rising in the pop music scene. Narrate worked for this client before becoming her bodyguard. After Nero became famous and all that, it was a goal for anyone to even hire him for a job. Charlie was pacing motionless and looked like he was wearing a path into the carpet. "Don't speak her name," Vaggie warned in a tone that promised death, and Angel nodded his head as he watched Charlie take a few deep breaths before leaving the main foyer and returning upstairs with a couple of strong stomps. Naruto was her guard, but while calculating his payment, she became a little flirtatious with him because of his fame, presumably his sus. Vaggie covered his mouth, which made him irritated. Finally, Viggy explained, "Hold up, Angel. Hold your hands up, dog. This is a virgin at your age," which shocked the room because, in hell, being a virgin was practically a sin, especially since Nero was 24 years old and already the center of many reforms in hell and royalty. With all of that going on, he shouldn't be a virgin. He appealed as a rising hellhound, and she was a succubus who could see his potential. With pleasure. Since most people would kill for that kind of attention, Angel laughed aloud as he collapsed into an armchair. Despite his aversion to talking about it, this made the succubus want him more, so she tried her luck with him. Instead, Naruto ran all the way back to the Pride Ring from the Lust Ring without his shirt on, remembering the state he was in when he got home that day. "With so many cuts we had to disinfect the men." The hotel staff nodded, understanding that there was a reason for the tension, but most didn't care because Angel now had something new to offer. When Charlie was called up to sell her Nara's services, she told her what she had tried and, without restraint, gave her a very graphic idea of what she would do to her if she ever laid a hand on Naruto again. Since then, both have tried to avoid talking about her or even mentioning her concerts. "Talk to Cherry about when she came to see me, the Virgin Hound," Now that is a riot angel, Nero thought as he stepped out of the limousine, taking in the ring of greed and all it had to offer. But more significantly, the arena he was attending for work was bigger than most castles in hell, and from what he could see, it was designed specifically to fit as many people in as possible. He pulled out his phone and started a tweet ring of greed note to self smack Angel when I get home, for reasons I don't know why. Nar patted Xavier's shoulder and said come and pick me up the minute I call you got it, enjoy your time in the ring, and let Charlie know I got here safely. Of course, Lord Naruto. Xavier smirked in response, and Naruto growled before he drove off, saying, one day that is going to just call me Nero as Lucifer, have them spend all their money on some dumb show on a huge stage that looks grand in design. Imps were the lowest ranking demons in hell, and hellhounds were roughly as high ranked as them. However, due to Naruto's popularity, that is changing and they were ranked higher than imps and other minor demons. Naruto thought, wow, someone just got knifed, as he watched a fish-like demon get gutted and looted by a cat demon. The female voice said, oh good you're here, and Naruto turned to see two smaller imps carrying clipboards and coffee, followed by a slightly taller female imp wearing glasses and a black business suit. I figured I'd get here earlier than normal to let me get a feel for the place, Naruto said, assuming his businessman said. Given the same importance of other demons of minor classes, they were considered useless and worthless, but Nar knew that everyone has a purpose. That's good, at least someone knows how to be an effing professional. People shouting this to all the employees who either scurried faster or just growled, said the woman, who sighed and motioned for Naruto to follow her. He did so, and he was led into an office on the highest floor with a view of the concert. The two imps next to her put their belongings on her desk and motioned for Naruto to sit in one of the chairs in front of her desk. One of the two imps rushed over to ask if there was anything they could do for Naruto when he reached out to shake her hand. Can we get anything for you, sir? They asked enthusiastically. Naruto raised an eyebrow and saw the female imp eye. No, I'm good, but thanks for asking, he said, taking $200 out of his pockets and passing it to the two imps. Why don't you guys go get something to eat while your boss and I talk? He asked. Need you? Diane said sharply, causing the two imps to run out the door. It's great to see more imps running around and working these days, Naruto said, laughing. Yeah, but let's get right to the point, Naruto said, looking at Diane. I'm sure you're aware Tex called you on my request. Naruto thought before answering. Yes, he said, I need help, which baffles me, because normally Tex can deal with riff-raff and idiots who rush the stage or try to get too close to your star. Diane said in a professional way. To ask for my help, that means something is going on that isn't known outside of a few people in the public setting, Nero said, tying his fingers together. Any reason for this? Diane asked, grinning and then huffing. She rose from her chair, took a sip of her coffee, and said, you're perceptive, and that's the exact reason I want to hire you today. Turning to face him and evoking a male pop star named J.K. pronounced Jack, as Narrett stared at her. He wore bell-bottom pants from the 1970s, which were tie-dyed acid green, black, and teal blue. He had a triangle headband around his short, feathered blonde hair, which had short horns on the sides of his head, a star painted on his right eye, black circular glasses, and cowboy boots that were white with black. Diane then produced an old poster that featured a red-skinned humanoid demon with thin, muscular arms and torso, because he was shirtless, revealing multiple dollar signs tattooed on him. As the Incubus pop star J.K. performed at the Ring of Gluttony for his Lust and Love tour, a mountain of men and women surrounded him. Get your tickets now to see J.K.'s new training outfit, which includes studs that make dollar signs in his arms, a guitar covered in diamonds that gives off a glistening effect, and a joint in his mouth. He seems to be trying to pass for David Bowie, Jimi Hendrix, John Lennon, Paul Stanley, and Elvis. Naruto nodded his head as he set down the poster. He was a huge star in the 1990s, wasn't he? He also learned about the human musicians from Charlie Jack Cash's stage, named J.K. I remember him well because my family told me about him. He was also one of our big cash grabbers back in the past, and he was Vera's vocal coach before hiring her as a backup vocalist. Diane scowled as she struck the poster, nearly shattering the table it was on. He had seen strange things in hell, so that's a possibility. You must have heard what he did 2 years ago, Diane said to Naruto as she lifted her hand to rub her eyes and took another drink. You mean he killed several people in his agency and murdered that up-and-coming star? Because he was becoming more popular than him? Naruto asked nonchalantly, waving his arms and shoulders. Of course I heard about it, she added, and didn't he get really mad when people called him jackass? He thought he could succeed without a studio to support him, and she gave him a gloomy smile. However, he soon realized that wasn't going to be the case, especially since he lacked the resources and means to succeed in this capacity. Furthermore, Naruto knew from personal experience that unless one had a personal backer, chances are, you see, Verasa, our star, is having this massive concert, and if it is a mass success like we think it will be, she is going to finally bury that fool to the point that he will never recover, Diane said, sincerely hoping this would work out. Going to hell is why new pop stars keep coming up, but the good ones are few and stay at the top for over 10 years. So what does this have to do with your star and my hiring? Naruto asked, seemingly anticipating the direction of the conversation. The main reason we are hiring you is because we know that JK is coming to murder today. So we need to stop him from succeeding and, if necessary, kill the DM and fool once and for all. Since JK still has some followers and power, it would be very helpful for us if you could get rid of him and his followers. Okay, Naruto sighed, this job is so difficult right now. So the goal is to kill JK if he shows up. He has followers, so kill them too, and don't disrupt the show at all costs, Diane continued, turning to him after burning the poster of one of their former stars. Leaving the table remnants charred. You know that my rates for jobs like this are not cheap, especially since this puts the hotel in the crosshairs of things if something goes wrong, she said, raising an eyebrow. Diane smiled, pushing her glasses up her nose and leaning back as she looked down on him metaphorically. I know, which is why I promise you that I will pay the amount as required and make sure anything that can come back to you from JK or his followers will be buried and done, Diane said confidently. However, if he turns out to be more than you thought and you want more compensation, Diane removed her glasses and pressed them sensuously against her lips. I am willing to give my services, she said. Naruto swallowed a lump in his throat and cracked his neck before he could perspire. He stretched his limbs and said, I guess it's time to earn my paycheck for the day. Hopefully, I can avoid any unnecessary issues. As for enjoyment, I'm fine. Diane pouted before putting on her glasses again. But if you manage to keep JK's head intact, please bring it to me. I'll feel superior to that effing loser, Diane said as she sat down, and Nar rolled his eyes before leaving the office. Inside, man, my job is going to be complicated, Diane said. The concert was in full swing when Verasa had the crowds cheering, lusting, and some even trying to rush the stage for her as she sang Bad Romance by Lad. He groaned, I can feel it, as he walked down the hall and smelled a familiar scent. He quickly turned on his heels and went the other way, thinking, I will not deal with Verasa if I can prevent it, thinking time skip with paranoid. I want you ugly, I want your disease, I want your everything as long as it's free. I want your love, love, love. He thought that was more of a fashion statement than anything else. The succubus is dressed up for the event in her usual white outfit of zero, showing off her hot pink skin, hergless figure, and horns that are shined up for the occasion, one shorter than the other. She also has pink eyes, yellow clear pink hair, and a heart-shaped tail. Overall, he could understand her appeal, and text prevented people from boarding the. In a matter of minutes, the whole situation almost descended into chaos. Naruto's earpiece allowed him to communicate with other officers in case JK showed up, but so far, the concert was going well, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Vera's followers are busy amusing themselves with the idiots in the crowd they can reach, knocking them unconscious or throwing them back into the crowd if necessary. I guess you can hear me. Someone broke in through the back, and an officer yelled in Naruto's earpiece, nearly rupturing his eardrum. By sheer luck, Naruto touched his earpiece in his hidden ears. Perhaps JK's absence would help him save face. Naruto thought as he looked around the crowd from his position. Do we know where they went? You must stop JK. They're heading to the stage. Naruto sniffed about and noticed an odd odor. In a matter of seconds, the overrated and ruined pop star emerged, charging through the back curtains with a maniacal expression on his face. He looked like most incubus he had ever seen, with red skin, black horns, and skimpy clothes, but unlike other incubus, Jack Cash let himself go, causing his shirt and pants to stretch tight across his body. He had lost the thin, muscular appearance he had during his career, instead developing a huge pig belly and his limbs looking like oversized sausages with stubby. Dude probably is full of DRGs right now, Naruto thought, observing that Jack's eyes were almost entirely red, that his arm had a rubber strip wrapped around it, and that his elbow had infected injection holes. His blonde hair was a long tangled mess that was clearly cut by Jack himself due to its crudeness, and his face looked like a balloon full of wet sand that was about to burst with rage. Sorry, buddy, you're not getting to Verasa, he said, growling and foaming at the mouth. Get the F out of my way, you effing nut, she has to die for me to rise again. man, Jack yelled, pointing at Naruto, who rolled his eyes at the threat thinking, your popularity is sunk because you sug. No one is interested in a has-been who can't come up with new material on his own, even if. The fan screamed in surprise as Jack, who was shocked to see both men there, punched Naruto, knocking off his beanie and shattering his glasses from the tackle. You succeeded. No one would listen to you now as you're a fat ass foo, the incubus screamed as he ran toward Nar, moving faster than Nero expected from an incub by his size. I'm big-boned. The incubus, however, was surprisingly agile enough to jump off the ground and draw a knife that looked to be coated in some purple liquid poison. How weak, Naruto thought in frustration. I will not be denied my fame. I will rise again and stand at the top, like I was always meant to, Jack declared. Yep, definitely annoying. Naruto sighed. You're a dime a dozen. Female stars last longer than male ones, Jack said. After the tackle, however, Naruto pushed the incubus away from him with greater lust and excitement. She took everything, Jack screamed, his voice cracking as he sobbed, and all she had to do was serve me. And I would have given her everything, but she had to mature, gain more fame, and then take my place as the top star. Vera blushed, but she is angry at her former teacher because he is threatening to hurt her future dog with a knife and, worse, cause trouble at her concert that beach. Come on, jackass, I'm the true king of hell, he said, Jack shouted as he charged him and slammed the knife into his chest, and Naruto scowled and thought, wow, the drugs must be good if he is this high on himself. He then shook his head and said, unfortunately for you, I'm not going to let you get close to her. Smiling as he realized that his taunts were beginning to irritate the former pop star. I'm immune to poisons by now, but even if that got me, I'm strong enough to stop a knife. The large crowd cheered as he picked up the head and the body. Jay, you are so stupid that it's no wonder you lost fans so quickly. Naruto coughed as the broken, poison-covered knife blade struck the ground, his skin unpierced. Nero then swiped his claws, beheading the pop star and letting his body fall to the ground, releasing BL all over the stage. Despite the fact that the force of your attack is still hurting and will cause some bruises, he quickly pulled them off the stage, dropped the body, and pulled down his shirt just enough to lift his fur and reveal some swelling on his chest. Nero complained, hello honey, in a sensual voice. His whole body froze, first standing on end, and then he turned to see Verasa standing there, smiling. It's so kind of you to protect a little old me, and I want to reward you later, she said, winking at him. Oh well, I'll catch him sooner or later, it's only a matter of time, Naruto thought as he returned to his post. I should ask Charlie if I can install more locks in my room windows no around the entire hotel, he thought as he went back to his post. He disappeared quickly, leaving Verasa to pout. She shrugged her shoulders and went back to the stage to sing. Asterisk stab disc scratch muffled screaming stab asterisk written by Vera. Diane said joyfully, thank you so much for this lovely gift, even though I don't think many people in the crowd notice me killing JK. According to Naruto, who was looking around in mild paranoia, oh, who gives a the concert went off without a hitch. I noticed they wouldn't care because the cameras were focused on Verasa like normal, she said, admiring the head on the wall. She had turned the corpse into a table and added, I sure held a grudge against someone who killed one of their stars and tried to murder a former student and their top moneymaker. She wanted to enjoy this, so my money, Naruto said, sounding a little desperate to leave the building. Verasa could be lurking anywhere, she said. I hope I don't have to do anything like this for Verasa again, he thought before he looked up and smiled. His phone rang, signaling that he had received his money. Thank you again, Diane said cheerily as she gave Naruto her card. I got yours, which helped to calm him down. Yo dog, Vortex said as he saw Nero smiling at his friend. Heek's concert was a hit. The gray and black furred hellhound laughed at this joke, and he was a little taller than. Naruto waved his hand as if to push it aside. Not today, man, but when you guys hit it up later let me know. Nar politely refused. Besides, after getting hit with that knife, I want this welling to go down, and you're going to hit up Javens in the Pride Ring soon, Vortex inquired, hoping to have a party with his best friend. Naruto was more muscular and had more scarring on his ears and over his eyes, but that came with the territory their kind had, especially as a fame's bodyguard bouncer. Tell your girl, thanks for the jacket, I wear it when I can, Vortex said, and they hugged each other with one arm. I appreciate the jacket that Jacker, Vortex's girl, made for me. We'll do it. Man, catch you around, said Nero, and Vortex laughed before they said goodnight. Naruto texted Xavier, bring the car around. I'm ready to head home. Yes, Lord, stop that damn minute, annoying driver, after leaving one of his closest friends. Individuals.